Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Modern Markets Podcast. I have Joe and John from Lunar Crush with me today. It's awesome to have you guys here with me. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into the podcast. And Joe, if you would go ahead and just introduce yourself and your journey with Lunar Crush, and then we'll go ahead and jump on to John.
For sure, and cool, man. Thank you so much for having us on here. Excited to be here. And yeah, I mean, journey. Gosh, where can I start? Started kind of learning a little bit more about crypto in, we'll call it late 2014, early 2015. John actually introduced me to it when we were working together back then as well. And first time I saw it, it was kind of like what, like this is like the intersection of like finance and technology and money, and you just get hooked and you need to learn more. And as we kind of just talked about it more and more every day, you started buying a little bit, you started learning more, and then you started finding all of these other projects that were out there, and just kind of became enthralled with it, really. And somewhere along the lines, maybe a happy hour, or who knows when we said, we have to build something, we have to do something, because we had a lot of friends that were always asking us, like, what should I buy? What's Tron? Like all of these things. And so we said to ourselves, like, should we like consult with people? What should we do? And it's like at the time, like it was, I think at that time, probably 2017, and there was a lot of the ICO stuff was going on, and we're like, we should not be giving like financial advice on any of this stuff. You should never be giving financial advice. But it was really like, we wanted to become professionals. We wanted to become experts in the space. And so in order to do that, we needed to build something. We want to build. And so we kind of thought about the ways that we were trading and we were learning about the different projects. And you go to Twitter and you've got your feed and you're searching for stuff. And then you go to Reddit and there's kind of forums, a little bit more detail. And then there's some, at the time, not as probably as many news sources, but there's news sources out there. And so we were just looking at all of that. And you see one post from one influencer and it might say, you don't know if they're shilling something. You don't know if it's spam. You don't even know if it's a real account or if it's just like some sort of like avatar, and that's actually not even a human. And so we said, how do we put all this and aggregate it into one place so that we can really, listen to what's out there in its, entirety, and not just a small piece of what the market is saying and a couple of people. And so started kind of aggregating a lot of this data. A year probably passes where we get enough data and we start to feel comfortable about the way that we were presenting it. We brought the rest of the team on, and that was kind of what Lunar Crush was. It was just a project that we said, could we do this? And when the answer kind of became yes, it was for us. It was, there was no questions asked. It was like, let's go do this full time.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story, man. John, if you'll go ahead and share yours as well.
Well, I'm an investor first more than anything, and it's funny, when I met Joe, we were working at an ad agency, a really big ad agency, and working in automotive. And, I probably have 15 years of combined experience working at agencies. And so really knew the social media game, knew about SEO, knew about building websites. I built hundreds of websites. I built a website building platform before with actually one of our co-founders. It's sort of like I've always had this interest in finance ever since I was a little kid. Like, I think my dad got me into like stocks, and when I was like 5, he'd bring home the Wall Street Journal and I'd read it, and I'd look at all the static prices that would change once a day. Right. And then, internet comes along and, oh, what's this Yahoo Finance thing? And so I've sort of always been interested in finance. And then when I was working at an ad agency, a guy I worked with was talking about this Bitcoin thing. And this was back in like 2013. And I was like, what is that? This was pre-Mt. Gox. And he was I just still remember he was showing me his Mt. Gox account at the time. I shortly thereafter got in small positions, just experimenting. What is this fake internet money? It's spam. Then we had Silk Road, and we had all this fun stuff happen. Mt. Gox hack, of course. And it's kind of one of those things that you don't really shake off. Once you start learning about this stuff, you realize how messed up the real world currently is with the fiat money printing system. And there's no better example than what's going on right now. But really started as an investor. And I think when we started realizing that we were discovering all these other projects, whether it be Ethereum or Litecoin or Monero or Dash, or throughout those years, it became clear that we're finding those on social, but we're only subjected to whatever is in our feed. We're only seeing who we follow. We're only seeing who retweets and shares. We're not seeing a good cross section of the whole market and what actually people are saying. And we're certainly not knowing, how is activity today versus yesterday? Are people more bullish or bearish than yesterday? it's funny because even today we see it almost every day. We see people say, "Oh, it's been a long time since anyone's talked about X coin," and we actually have the data to prove them wrong, to prove otherwise. And people are saying things like, "Oh, everyone's so bearish on Bitcoin." They were saying this last week.
What?
And oh yeah, all the time. We still see it. We were on another webinar a little bit ago, a few days ago, that everyone was calling for a crash, and these were experts in Bitcoin before the halving.
Wow.
And people don't know. You just don't know.
Right.
And so, we built this tool to try and uncover what's really going on, not just right at this moment in my feed, but across everything over time. And that was really the idea. And what's actually unbelievable to us is how correlated some of this stuff is, because we also didn't know when we started this journey. We didn't know, like, well, great, we're capturing all of Twitter, we're capturing all of Reddit, news, YouTube, Medium, all this stuff, and great, neat, but does it matter to me as an investor? Because all I'm used to just looking at price and volume. I might look at wallets and things like that. What exactly was it that made someone create a wallet? What exactly was it that made them go trade? Was it the earnings reports of these coins? Because there are none.
There, yeah.
What exactly, other than the community, is there? And so as we created all, like, Lunar Crush, and really improved upon our data collection, improved upon that user experience, we started noticing, and we still see it, and we're still amazed every single day, again, just how correlated social movements are to price activity.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's an awesome story, guys. Similar to what you were saying about your story of, like, getting into cryptocurrency and, getting into the blockchain industry. Once you get in, you have a totally different opinion about finance in general, because then you have to, if you understand the history of Bitcoin, or, why Bitcoin was created, and then you have to understand the history of money, you understand that the current system doesn't benefit everybody. And then you just really want to create products in this industry that utilize these new investment tools, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and you just get so excited about it because it's something you don't really understand. And that's one of the reasons why I got into cryptocurrency, is because I saw something funny enough. The reason that I'm in this industry today is because a friend of mine was posting about Litecoin on Twitter in 2017. So that's the very reason that I'm even doing what I'm doing today. So wow, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, that's amazing. So first of all, what is Lunar Crush, and how does this product benefit anyone using it?
I guess I can take it. What is it? So language is important when you're starting a new business, and you have an opportunity to kind of create the language around what these things are. And sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes it's more complex. And I think when we first started this, we were trying to figure out what it was for even ourselves. We knew that social and community really mattered when it came to identifying projects that made sense and trying to protect investors versus things that potentially didn't have a community. But at the end of the day, we're a social listening tool that's helping our customers make better investment decisions in the cryptocurrency space. And so when I say protect consumers, I mean things like when you're coming on for the first time and you don't have a lot of data and you're trying to make educated decisions. A lot of people are saying, well, hey, just buy a little bit of Bitcoin, and then that will kind of get you in and learn a little bit more. But the bottom line in this space is that there's a lot of problems that Bitcoin cannot solve, right? And the double spend problem has there's so many more things that this can help, so many more problems that cryptocurrency can help solve that are solved by other blockchains, right? And so there's a lot of investment opportunity, right? And there's a lot of opportunity out there. And when that happens, you've got a lot of people that potentially can create some things that, might look good from the outside, but aren't really that good from the inside. And so when we're out there, what we're actually doing is we're aggregating this data from across the web. So we're looking at things like Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, Medium, news. And as we pull these sources in, and we're going to be adding more sources as we grow, is we're really cleaning and organizing this data in a way that makes sense for investors to understand, and we're trying to simplify it, right? And so before Lunar Crush, you didn't really know, you couldn't go out there anywhere and figure out, like, hey, as the halving is moving up, are more people talking about it than last time, right? And you see a lot right now, a lot of people go out and they're like, oh, look at this Google search trend that I did, and they're trying to use that as insights. And at the end of the day, that's not an insight. It's a little bit more people than last time. It's on a scale of 0 to 100. It doesn't show you the actual number of posts or mentions or searches. Google doesn't publish that information. And so what we do is we give people a really good idea of how is something performing over time with regards to its community. And that community is what we think ultimately, and that adoption is what is driving the value in most of these projects. And so we're helping people really identify value across over, I think now, almost 2,000 projects.
Yeah, and I will say that, I mean, like, think about it. Some of the best performing cryptocurrencies have the greatest communities. I mean, it's not like cryptocurrency A with a 15 million, $30 million market cap has a small community. That doesn't happen. You're going to have like XRP, Link, DAG has a really big community. So these cryptocurrencies, and like you said, I mean, like, social engagement is one of the best indicators to how great a project is, or how well it's going to perform. And like you said, I mean, using just Google Trends is probably not a very good indicator, and you can't really even use that for a lot of these smaller cryptocurrencies anyway. I mean, Bitcoin halving search term, okay, fine, who's buying Bitcoin? Great. But like, for other smaller cryptocurrencies, it's much harder to find that important data that you're looking for.
Yeah, and you got to think too, it's not just, I mean, this type of data is still important in the equity markets. It's just less important. I mean, or not less important. We just don't have that data, like earnings reports and all of these other things. And even when you watch CNBC, I mean, think about the environment right now. Companies don't have earnings. There is no earnings, right? And so it's like, what is happening? It's what are the talking heads on CNBC saying? Who's getting the most bailout? That's a data point. But why is Tesla still now above the price where Elon said it was too expensive? It's because people believe, and there's a crowd, and nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. And so
that's true.
It's just extrapolated in cryptocurrency much more than it is in any other markets in the world.
Yeah, and it's like, there's a video that always circulates around. It's like there's a guy just in the middle of like a I don't know, some kind of field dancing, and then he's the only one doing it. But when everybody else starts to join in, then
exactly right.
you get more and more people, because nobody wants to be the first one. So once you see more and more social volume, obviously you're going to be like, oh, well, this seems okay. More and more people are doing it, so why don't I do it?
I want to use that as an opportunity to talk about a couple metrics that we're just adding now, that we just are launching. So I guess I'll back up and explain a little bit how it works with how we collect. So Bitcoin, we start collecting many variants of people talking about Bitcoin, because you consider it like a mention, for example. Like, and there's the word Bitcoin, there's hashtag Bitcoin, there's ticker BTC, there's hashtag BTC. Sometimes there's just BTC, and so there's multiple variants of this. And we collect all of that. We clean it up using machine learning, homegrown natural language processing library that we've trained and built across tens to hundreds of thousands of tweets. And so we start collecting, and then we go deep, and we go very deep into the data. And so at first it was just, we were showing volume. So how many people mentioned Bitcoin today, right? And then it was, let's go deeper and let's capture engagement. Let's not just look at the number of posts that are out there. Let's look and see if those posts are actually driving any engagement. So we started to go deeper and said, let's start collecting retweets. Let's start collecting some comments. Let's start doing it across, even on Reddit. Let's look at karma and things of that nature. And so we started collecting these metrics. And so what we're recently launching now is trying to tell you, well, great, but how many people are actually posting? And so on an hourly basis, we call it social contributors. And so on an hourly basis, we can tell you how many individual profiles have been posting across these social channels on an hourly basis. And so deeper than that, we also, you're used to looking at things like market cap and maybe market dominance of a coin. We now also track social dominance. So as an example, if there are, 250,000 social posts that we collect in a day, yesterday was about 300,000. So if we collect those posts, what percentage allocation did each project have? So two different things here, but what's fascinating is seeing the number of people talking about it grow over time. And I'm thinking in my head, because we've seen it so much lately, Digibyte, for example. Digibyte is a project that has done nothing but go down for a long time, until we started noticing it about 3 or 4 months ago. we're going, okay, so price is down, but community is really genuinely growing. We're seeing more people, we're seeing more posts, we're seeing more posts from each person. And we're seeing that, yes, they have a market cap, a market dominance of maybe like a 0.4 or whatever that number is, but their social dominance is like a 2%. Interesting, because the social dominance is outweighing where they are in the market. So what's going on here? What we've seen since, the price rallied 600% in that period of time. Not a bad return. All while a lot of people are still saying bearish things. And so it's really important to not just see that there's 2 or 3 people talking about a project, but 3,000 posting often. And I think when you have that, if you bring that down the line, you have more liquidity, you have more trading volume, you have more wallets set up, you have more adoption, you have more real world users, more people telling their mom and cousin and brother they should check this thing out. And I think it's just sort of a natural flow. And at a minimum, the data is worth like saying, hey, you probably should take a look here. There's something potentially going on. If you just start and stop there, you're already winning. But if you take this a lot further and look at this on a real-time basis, you'll notice that, wow, like that social activity correlates. Again, back in my head, because I've seen Digibyte so much, it was correlating at a 5 out of 5 this last month, which is almost unheard of, meaning the social activity perfectly correlated to price.
Wow.
So, and we see it every now and then. Bitcoin was, I think, a 4.1 to 4.3 yesterday. So, you know, there's it's not always the same, it's not always even, but these metrics matter to go deep. This is a very hard problem to solve. Anyone can just start collecting posts. It's way more complicated than that, and we're not even talking about the UX of it yet. The UX layer of this is a really big deal.
Yeah, and so actually, I want to talk about a term that you guys spoke about when we talked to you last time in private. You mentioned like a term, social liquidity, and I thought that was the coolest thing because it makes sense. So obviously, you know, the more people who are engaging, the more people who are posting, that means that you have people investing. Obviously, if you have coin A with a very small amount of social liquidity, that probably also correlates to the actual liquidity of the coin itself. I like that term, social liquidity. I don't know if you guys have yet, or maybe you have, like bearish and bullish terms in posts themselves. Is this something that you guys are currently working on, or have the ability to kind of I guess have some insights on, like if somebody says, oh, Bitcoin's going to dump to 5,000, 4,000, whatever, something crazy, and these kinds of posts start to increase? Is this something that you guys are working on? I hope you get my question.
Yeah, no,
okay.
That was actually one of our original thesis was, can we identify the sentiment inside of the language that is happening? I mean, volume of content and frequency of content being talked about for each project is actually a huge deal. Sentiment in itself is an interesting one, because you're going to have people that are hodlers and are eternally bullish, right? And it's like on a 40% dump in Bitcoin, even though it might drop another 10%, they're still going to be bullish, period, because they're like, I'm buying again. But that's a good thing to understand, because if there's a baseline bullishness per se, and there's going to be a delta between kind of like the middle of the market and where they're going and what they're thinking about doing. But that's part of what John was saying with our library and the terms. As we pull those up, we're actually training each piece of content specifically, and so we kind of go through that manually as the first check, and we're looking at things like, how bullish was this piece of content, or this tweet, or this Reddit post, or this news article, or how bearish was it? Is it unrelated, right? There's a lot of terms out there, and I think people are going to learn, when they're starting these projects, that SEO is a big deal, and you probably don't want to name your project something that's very, like, you don't want to name it table coin, or you don't want to name it blue, or you want it to be very specific so you can kind of stand out. But it's also from an analytics perspective, as we're looking at these terms, we've had to go in and train it. And I've kind of used this example before, but in the equity market, like, the language is very specific. No one's saying, hey, Bank of America got wrecked today, REKT, and they're spelling it like that, right? Or like, like, they're not saying Tesla. I mean, they might say Tesla's going to the moon, but they're probably not saying Duke Energy is going to the moon,
Right.
So it's like, I think that specific language that we're adapting to and we're training, the machine on is very important for us to kind of return back to everyone and say, we have some accurate sentiment analysis, and it's, machine learning is never going to be perfect, but the more you train it, the more perfect it gets until it can get better than the human. And then it just keeps going and going and going. It's like you training eventually, when you're trying to land a plane with AI, it doesn't land, it crashes every single time, and then it lands, better than the human every single time. And so it's the same thing that we're looking at with sentiment, is as we train and we get more data and we train, then eventually it's going to get really, really accurate.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just to add to that a little bit, it's never done. Like as Joe's saying, it gets better and better.
Mm-hmm.
But sentiment, and I'll also add to that spam collection.
I was about to ask, yeah.
So the training also works with spam, and our spam collection is really, really good. It's really accurate. Sentiment's a lot tougher. There's a lot of different ways to say things, and there's a lot of different meanings when you connect phrases, not just saying this word, but it's actually really looking for patterns in things. But spam's a fun one because it's a little more obvious in crypto. When someone's using 27 tickers and memes and 19 emojis and it says sweepstakes in it and
and
all
pretending
this
to
stuff.
be Elon Musk.
The fake accounts. That's correct. Because how many fake Elon Musk accounts are there? Like, it's a lot easier to recognize this kind of stuff more programmatically versus subjectively. And so we use a similar pattern of training for spam as well. And that may be more important than anything, because there is so much spam. You can see it in your own feed. And if you can't clear through the clutter, you can't actually understand the meat of what's going on, right? There's just a bunch of junk and then you're off Twitter. Spam might have even been the first thing, I think. I don't know if sentiment or spam was the first focus, but both of these were really high up on our priority list.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was going to be one of my questions. How did you guys filter through the spam? Another question, you guys mentioned a couple of social media platforms earlier. And then we had a conversation about, not only spam, but like some of the news posts, I think that you guys scrape data from, it's not entirely accurate. Like, how do you guys, filter through some of these news posts and media, like YouTube videos, et cetera?
So we started with trying to use there's a bunch of third-party news aggregation services out there for crypto. And what we found, and this is again, when we launched a year ago, found pretty quick, was they're doing things like sometimes collecting tweets or YouTube videos or Reddit posts and counting them as news. And beyond like the top 30 or 40 projects, we're noticing, oh wow, there was one post today or 0 posts about this project. That can't be true. We go to Google News and there's like 200. Okay, what's going on? And so what we ended up doing was, we still do have some third-party news services that we do bring in via their APIs and their feeds. But what we decided to focus on was, a lot of these social posts, whether it be Twitter or Reddit or other channels, are have links in them, and those links, like a lot of those are news. And so what we ended up doing was saying, okay, well, what if we collected every single link in every single social post that we ever collect? And that's exactly what we did. So we collect every link. We then built a system to somewhat whitelist and organize, like, are these news sites? Are these something else? And so we have a whole classification system for domains. I think we've collected about 250,000 domains, not pages, but domains, out of all of those shared links. And so out of that, we have about 3,000 news sites that have been identified. And so this goes pretty deep technically, but we basically have thousands of news sites that we collect news from. And so just like everything else, it's imperfect. We're getting better at it. We're collecting more and more. But safe to say, this pattern, as this progresses, will undoubtedly, we will have more crypto news than any one period. There's not a chance. We will have it all. So if there's a crypto news site, we will have all of those links as long as they're shared. And here's the other fun part of that. If those news articles aren't shared and no one ever went to them from any social channel, to be honest, it's not our focus. Did they ever really matter? I could start a news website right now and I could post about all these coins, and if no one ever shared them, why on earth did I ever create that? What's the point? So
right.
I go further and say, is it even newsworthy if it's not shared at all? And so that's another fun, interesting topic. But any of us right now, we can create another commoditized news website. Fake logo, fake articles. Some of these are written by bots with no authors, and there's a lot of that.
Crypto
So
potato.
we're after trying to find also the news that's relevant.
Right. Awesome. Okay, as we approach the Bitcoin halving, and by the way, I do want to mention that this episode in particular is being recorded, 3 days now before the halving. As we approach the Bitcoin halving, are you guys collecting any kind of unique data around this? I imagine you are. Could you expand on that?
Yes. So there's many different things that we're collecting. I guess some of this might be a bit of a longer answer on this stuff. So yes, we collect mentions of the halving every single day by hour. And so what we've seen, just because I will pull it up in front of me, I want to be accurate. We went back to January 1st. And so on January 1st, on that day, there was 858 mentions of the Bitcoin halving.
Right.
And so 858 different individual posts said that. And then when we started to go into, say, like last week, Monday, April 27th, went up to 6,310. Yesterday, we had 8,226 mentions. So it's gone up, 2-3x in a week. And today looks like it's way higher than yesterday so far, but we don't have the day complete yet.
Right.
And so people are really, really talking about this. But we also went deeper and we wanted to look and see, well, who exactly is influential in talking about this stuff. So again, it's great that there's all these mentions. That's a really good macro kind of thing to look at. But we wanted to know who was most engaging. And so I could tell you who, I'll give you the top 5, who the most engaging social accounts are that are the halving. And so one of them is Plan B, which is 100 trillion USD is their handle. Crypto.com. We've got the Moon Carl. He's at the Moon Carl. We've got Pomp, of course. Yep. Yeah. We got A Pompliano.
Yeah.
And we've got our good friend Satoshi Flipper. So what we did was we looked at, well, how many times are they posting? How much engagement are they getting per post? We also looked at, what was fascinating was the accounts that have like the biggest following. For example, Reuters and Bloomberg, Financial Times, CNBC. So these accounts have a lot of followers, right?
Yes.
And what was fascinating was here we are looking at more mainstream accounts, and we're noticing that yes, they are, and in fact, they're starting to post a lot more about it. But the last few days, because now it's newsworthy.
Right.
But those accounts have been posting, like I'll take Reuters and Bloomberg, and I'll just take Reuters. They've done 5 tweets about the halving. They have, what is that, 21 million followers? They only got 324 engagements.
Oh my.
So what we have here, we have a situation where like we have Plan B, 100 trillion USD, has exponentially more engagements on their posts than Reuters does. So when we started looking at this data, the things that I think probably stuck out the most are the people who you'd expect to have the most influence in crypto, they do not. The people that have the most influence in crypto, they put in a lot of hard work. They do a lot of postings multiple times a day. They have big followings. They have big engagement. But it just goes to show that we've got this kind of polarizing thing going on here where there's the traditional financial media trying to get in on this, and the audience is just so very different that they're not latching on. And so it almost lends itself to a whole new crop of financial media companies in the future that are focused around crypto, and I think we've seen things like Cheddar, for example, has a weekly crypto show that I think is 30 minutes or 45 minutes or something, if you can find it and know when it's on. We're going to see the reverse. You're going to see 24-hour crypto networks, and it's going to be sponsored by, it's going to be brought to you by people you never heard of before.
Right.
So I just find that this data is really it's a microscopic piece of a bigger picture where there's this whole new media kind of world that's beginning.
There's also like I think there's a marketing problem. It's like Satoshi kind of screwed up with calling it the halving. Like some of my friends that aren't as familiar in the space, will be like, oh, is it like a stock split? You know, like halving, like do I get,
Yeah.
are mine worth less? Like, I think there's some
Right.
confusion, and I know it
Yeah.
sounds so stupid, but it's like, if you have no idea and you're not in the space, I mean, a lot of us have been in the space now for half of a decade, some people 10 years. It's like you're breathing, you know,
Hmm.
crypto. And for some people that are still coming in, it's still a small market. It's like, it's a confusing thing. And so I think, you know, some of those bigger, you know, publications might not be explaining it, or it's like the headline doesn't grab like they want it to. And so they use other terms, where you got the people that are deeply involved with it, that are the ones that are really talking about it and really interested in what's happening, also because they're the investors right now.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is like, Reuters, it's about like, marketing in this industry in particular. I mean, it's probably marketing in general, but like Reuters is out here just posting an article and then, something basic like, oh, Bitcoin halving coming up. Whereas, Plan B is actually posting really cool information like the stock to flow chart, which, may or may not be useful or not, but it doesn't matter because people are still engaging with it, because it seems to be interesting information that correlates really well. So it's also like the shift in marketing. Influencers are the new media. It's almost like the media is back in the hands of the people again. Look at Wendy's. I mean, they're out here like streaming Twitch now. I don't know if you guys knew, they're out here with the Wendy's employees streaming on Twitch playing Animal Crossing. So they're trying to adhere
Yeah,
to
smart.
yeah. Yeah, I saw him on on TikTok streaming on Twitch, and that's another thing. I mean, TikTok. I mean, I don't think TikTok even has any APIs available yet, but I'd be interested to see what kind of data you could pull from that when they finally pull out something. But yeah, it's quite interesting to see the marketing shift and whatnot.
When you
So
talk about Wendy's too, you talk about a company that has a CMO
mhm,
and is on message, right? And
yeah,
how important is it, do we all know, to have an organization be on message and be out there saying the same thing, saying something that's clear, concise, easily understandable? When you're looking at Bitcoin specifically, there's no CMO of Bitcoin. Like, they're
right,
not doing a Super Bowl ad, right? And so you've got a lot of different opinions out there, from people that are maximalist to people that believe in the entire market, like bringing up together, to, who's Satoshi to who's not Satoshi. Like, there's so many different things that it's like, it's almost like we don't have our shit together, right? And when you don't have that together, then it becomes the message, and I guess the adoption becomes potentially a little bit harder. I don't know how to solve that. I'm just pointing out, it's something that as a community and in the crypto space that we should be spending a little bit more time on, is what is, potentially trying to get on message and get on, it's like you've got anarchists and nihilists, and you've got all these kind of people that are a little bit all over the place with what they're trying to do. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to create a better world for people to,
yes,
to bank and to live better lives and to get a little bit of their money back. And,
yeah. And they're very
so it's like,
emotional about it, and that's the thing about like marketing these days. Just try to derive emotion. When you're so null and void in your marketing, good luck with that. It's not going to work out.
right.
I've been on a real big trip here ever since a few different seminars that we've been on recently, where look, there's people being hypocritical in our space. They keep talking about mainstream adoption and they do nothing to
Yeah,
make it happen.
yeah,
Everyone talks about these glory days in the future where everyone's going to be, trading with crypto and buying everything with crypto, and everything's going to have a smart contract, but they're not doing anything. They're talking to the same people. They're building tools for the same scientific crowd
right.
that is crypto.
Yep.
And you've got to step outside of building solutions for other technical individuals, and that's all. There's a couple projects that are on my mind because we've seen it in the last couple days. One, there's a project called Chili's that has a platform called Socios, and they're working with a lot of the European soccer teams, and they're tokenizing them. Yesterday, they announced they're tokenizing the UFC,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
so
I've seen
it's very, very
like
cool.
CHZ. I haven't actually seen what they're
The
doing though. Yeah.
CHZ, and so I don't care if you love or hate the project, or if you're a Bitcoin maximalist and don't look at anything else, dude. That's mainstream adoption right there. That
Yep.
is exactly what the space needs. We need, if you just look at like FC Barcelona, Barcelona is being tokenized on their platform. Barcelona has 35.5 million people on Twitter, just Twitter alone, more on Facebook, and that doesn't even include the players.
Yeah, that's true.
What's the social value of Barcelona mentioning their token in one tweet?
Golly.
It's enormous.
That's
Not for
enormous.
Chili's, for crypto, it's
Yeah.
enormous. UFC, what if Conor McGregor says something? What if Dana White says something?
Right.
And so these are the kinds of things that are huge. And today, another example is we saw Zilliqa. Zilliqa announced a tipping product that they've got. And so they're using a smart contract built on their platform that will tip people that use certain hashtags for certain campaigns. It'll automatically tip them just via DM on Twitter. And, these are the kinds of things. Look, they're investing in their own project.
Right.
They're using their own funds to grow and derive mainstream adoption.
Right.
There's hardly any projects doing this, and it blows my mind. Everyone still goes to crypto conferences talking to the same 1,000 people,
Yeah.
talking about how smart contracts are the future, barely technically making them work,
Right.
but no one's using anything. And so I think, a lot of respect to these projects that are stepping out, looking for that mainstream adoption and taking risks. I mean, these are startups. They have teams. It's not Bitcoin. Bitcoin's its own animal, but most of these alts are actual startups with
Yes.
actual teams. They're on actual payroll.
Yep.
And so it doesn't make them a shitcoin, as everyone seems to call them. It makes them startups.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're a startup, you need product market fit, just like what we've been trying to do. We don't have a token, but it's no different. If you have no product market fit, what are you doing? You're basically surviving off of your ICO funds from 2016, 2017, and then you're eventually out of business.
Yeah.
So,
That's a very good point. It's like building a project in your garage, but having actually like no mainstream use case for it. Yeah, it's cool. You can show your friends off, your little project, but like, how does this help everybody? And so, what you guys are building is a platform that's going to allow people to take all this social data that may not make much sense to anybody on the outside, especially somebody, from the financial or the traditional financial industry, and you're taking it and you're making sense of it. This is something that I think, obviously, I talk about this a lot. I talk about, the fact that there's not very many mainstream use cases for a lot of the stuff that's in crypto. They're not trying to bridge the gap and take information at the very least and try to translate it for people. So I agree, totally agree. And actually, going back to the comment you made about these altcoins being startups, we talked about this at one point where Bitcoin and Ethereum are kind of like the revenue or the reserves that fund these startups. A lot of these startups, they'll use Bitcoin and Ethereum that they accumulate from the ICO sale, IEO, whatever, and of course those reserves are what they use to survive. So you're funding these startups, and if they don't have a mainstream use case, well, in the case of from 2017 to now, you die. You don't survive.
They were just grossly overfunded.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, a lot of these tokens too. I mean, so there's no max supply, or most of it hasn't been released yet. So they've got these reserves. I mean, and a lot of this doesn't sound like a really good, solid investment.
Yeah.
When you, one of the reasons Bitcoin has its value, maybe the core reason, is that there's 21 million.
Yes.
And look at what XRP is doing. Every month, I love the whale trades, the whale alerts that you get, and it's like, oh, I don't know, like another billion XRP has been unlocked.
Oh, goody.
And yeah, it's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to just sit here and be like funding this thing forever, and it's a tough equation. You got to really know what's going on some of these.
Right. And then the Ripple IPO comes out, and then what then?
At least they're I think they're attempting to get product market fit, and there's some use case there and providing international liquidity. I think they're trying. I think it's just like you're saying, it's like any other startup. It becomes a little bit less attractive when you get flooded out, when you get diluted, right?
It's dangerous.
And so it's just a little bit less attractive, but it's like at least they're out there, I think, still trying.
Yeah, I agree. I know there is. I mean, I've used XRP before. It's pretty fast. So I know they're definitely trying. It's just like, when you raise so much money and you start selling off so much, it just starts to look really bad in the public eye. But yeah, right. I do agree. What would you guys be doing if you were not running Lunar Crush?
Well,
you want to go first?
I mean, before I was, it's kind of funny because before I was doing this, Well, I went from working at agencies, and then I got into artificial intelligence, and then I ran the UX and design team at a big AI company. We were building an operating system for artificial intelligence, basically, where
Wow.
you take hundreds of engines and with different cognitive capabilities, and then you could process data. So for example, you could transcribe videos, do facial recognition, you could redact faces out of videos and things like that using AI, but it's using many engines simultaneously together. And so I was responsible for building the UI to access all of that for the customers. And so big public company I was working for. So I would probably, but now I'm doing something similar. It's just kind
Right.
of funny.
Yeah. You just
Building a UI
brought your
with
skills
lots of
over.
data. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's the same thing. I'd probably be doing something similar, just UX and design and product management and things like that. But I also seem to do a lot of marketing too. So I don't know. Yeah, probably UX.
I'd probably just be surfing, I think.
Yep.
Awesome.
Surfing, or I think like kind of part of my passion is like, psychology and, working with people one-on-one and trying to kind of tease out, what drives someone and helping kind of inspire confidence. And so I'd probably be working more one-on-one with people, versus, working in a large organization. I've worked in super large organizations, a majority of my career, and I love it. I worked in, I've started other startups before, and I love that too. And I think it's like the connection that you can get with a small team is pretty amazing. And so I think for me, my skill set lies from like, paper napkin to, kind of mid-size, and that's where I like to interact and to be.
Awesome. Yeah. And actually, this is a great transition into your experience with Techstars. So, for anybody who doesn't know, like Techstars Accelerator is an incubator for startup growth. So, you guys had the opportunity to go through Techstars. So, what was that experience like for you guys?
Techstars was great. I mean, so for like you're saying, for people that don't know, I mean, it's a global accelerator. I think they're in like almost 100 cities globally, and they do about, depending on the class, they try to stick around 10 startups per class. You go in, it's almost like a 3-month like boot camp, in order to just kind of reset your business. And all, businesses of different sizes go in there. I mean, different programs have, some really early stage companies, but then, you look at, some of the programs they've done in the past, like, things with Disney, and you've got companies that are going in there that already have a ton of funding and everything. But, the goal of it is just to recalibrate your business. And, we did the Techstars LA program here last year from July to October. And it was a great experience. I actually have done a Techstars program before that back in Kansas City in 2014. So I've done it twice now. And so,
Awesome.
obviously that's kind of like the seal of approval for that. There's a ton of value there. And it's also great to see other companies at those stages. And, a lot of times, if you're in an office with 10 other companies and there's, 10 other, management teams there, and you're kind of bouncing ideas, and there's things that are completely separate than what you're doing, it's cool. There were people in our last program, there were people that were dropping packages out of the sky and, delivering in rural areas, and had some amazing software to do that. And, there were companies that were helping, parents pay for education simpler, and kind of crowdsourcing their families' income to help, pay for stuff. And it was just an amazing opportunity to learn from really smart people and to kind of interact with a crew of people that are pushing just as hard as you're pushing.
I think the big thing for me, my takeaway was the environment of it. I mean, imagine sitting yourself all day, every day for 12, 13 hours in the midst of people all trying to start something. So like, it's
It's a great
inspiring,
environment.
you know,
Yeah, that's awesome.
it is. It's like, you could get a job anywhere and never ever have that feeling, and to just be surrounding yourself, and not like a WeWork or a tech space or any of these kinds of things, but actual companies that are all surrounding you in one big room. You're all meeting with some of the biggest minds out there, and other businesses. There's all these guests that come in and talk to you and give you pointers and advice, and different VCs coming in, and advisors. I mean, we met Freddie, one of our advisors there. It's just, I think, just if anything, I mean, for me, I didn't just start working. I'm in my early 40s now. So I was old for going into Techstars.
Yeah.
And it's like a kickstart. it's like you start over again. It kickstarts your thinking. I think it's really easy to get further along in your career, make your way up and feel safe and stop taking risks. And I think that, I don't know, nothing's felt better in my career than kind of saying, all right, it's time to, eat it for a little while, make less money, take more risk, convince my wife to go, this is a great idea. Trust me, this is awesome. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Can always go back and get another job someday, but
Right.
to actually do a startup, I mean, I encourage my own kids to do that. I'm like, great, go to college, do a startup. It's okay to fail. Nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that. Fail 10 times, it's cool. You have
Yeah.
nothing to lose. In your 20s, what are you doing getting a consistent job?
Yeah, I
You know,
agree. Yeah, that's kind of why
makes
I'm
no
here.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, that's, I think the first thing, what you said is the environment, just being around a bunch of other, entrepreneurs. That's pretty exciting on its own. People that think the way an entrepreneur thinks is, you're not too big to fail. Like nothing is too difficult, and you'll figure out, how to make things work. And that kind of environment, those types of people are the types of people that, I myself want to, surround myself with. And I really do try to do that to this day, which is, why, my team is, we've been able to spend as much time as we have together and not kill each other. Cause we're all the same. Yeah. We're all the same, type of personality. We just want to make it work, whether failure or not, we're going to figure it out. And I think that's really cool. Being able to be around those types of people, and it must have been a huge accomplishment as well. I mean, especially for you, Joe. What, you got 2 under your belt? Like, let alone just getting 1? Come on, man.
Yeah, no, it was great, and I think it's a hard thing to go and do because it is 3 months of your time, and the older you get, like John was saying, it's more disruptive to your lifestyle and your, if you have a family and travel and a lot of people that do these programs come from other cities, sometimes other countries. They have to uproot whether their family or be away from their family or their significant other for a long period of time, and so it was almost a harder decision going into it the second time, being a little bit older, but then also knowing the amount of work that you were going to have to do and the amount of time that you were going to have to take. But like if you're a true entrepreneur, you just don't know any other way. Like it's like I just remember I was probably trying to convince John or do something, and it was just like I didn't know any other way. Like, let's do this thing, let's go, let's build, let's see where this takes us, and you just have to take the first step. And once you take the first step, everything else, becomes easier. And it's like,
Yeah.
setting a goal, so it's like you have to set a goal that you might not know how to achieve, but once you set that goal and you make that decision, then you start working backwards and you figure it out. You figure out how you're going to get there. But I think a lot of
Right.
people might just be, especially for the younger folks, they're just a little bit more nervous. Their parents are telling them, hey, go to school, go do this, go work for this consulting company, go work for this large company, here's the path, get a safe job. And I think what people don't realize is the amount of risk that you're actually taking is very minimal at the younger ages. Like
Yes.
it's minuscule. And then the amount, like we always say, like our company's month is another company's year, and I learned that from, a good friend of mine, Doug Lambert. He said that, and I was like, holy shit, that's so true. And it's what you learn even in 1 year of a startup could be 5-6 years of what you're going to learn
That's
at a large
incredible.
company. And you can
Yeah.
always go learn. If you go do a startup and you do that for 2 years, and then you go and interview for one of these consulting jobs, you're going to be so far ahead of where the rest of these candidates are that it's like, and all you had to do is, save a little bit of money or try to live with a couple of people when you're younger. And so everyone that has the opportunity to do it, I would say, take the risk, go figure it out, go learn, and you're going to be better for it.
That's
And
awesome.
I'll add, do it whenever it makes sense. If you're 70 years old, go do it. If you're 90, go do it.
Yeah.
If you're 18, go do it. The biggest thing, I've got a lot of friends that have these really comfortable, stable jobs. They're going to look back when they're 80 and say, coulda, woulda, shoulda,
Yeah.
like take some risks in your life, go out there, build something, learn something. We're growing, we're doubling month over month on our growth. I mean, working for a big company, you're lucky if you get 10% growth, or in this environment, you're lucky if you're growing 0. All I can say is just take some risk. It doesn't matter where you are in your life.
Yeah, and I will always, tell people, I started a company at 19 years old. It was an IT company. It's funny because I thought that was what I was going to do, for the rest of my life. I started that company and we did fairly well for a while, But, eventually, things didn't work out and I ended up failing. But what I learned from going through that whole process and failing, in that business was so much more than I could have ever read from a book or learned from somebody, giving me advice or watched from a video. You have to experience these things to truly understand how not to do things, basically. And then the other thing is, I don't want to live life with regrets. I don't want to be, 60, 70 years old and ask myself, was it worth it? Or, should I have gone a different direction? Should I have, taken that opportunity to start that business or work with that company? I don't want to be like that. I want to take the opportunities that are directly in front of me and I want to just make it work. And if it doesn't, cool. I learned a lot from it probably. So I want to ask you guys, in particular, what advice would you guys give startups in the crypto industry? We briefly spoke about, a lot of the companies in the crypto industry, but what